Okay.
You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Let's get this, Jack. Yes, sir. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, 8 to 10 a.m., Wednesday through Sunday. You can see our Facebook shows on Mac Sports and Northeast Streaming Sports Network, with our platforms also on Twitter, Instagram. Like, follow, comment, share, subscribe when possible. Check out the website on the macandjacksports.com called Mac's Insiders. For information on weekly guest articles, team public relations updates, a list of shows on Northeast Streaming Sports, our great sponsors with links to their products and services. I'm Mac with your co-host, the legendary boxing writer, Jack Hirsch, who's also the former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, bringing you national sports with special focus on Northeast professional sports from New York, Boston, and Philly. Good morning, Jack. And now there's only one of the local teams left. So now there's one, the Buffalo Bills.
Well, it's happy days for the Buffalo Bills, their first playoff win in 25 years. If you became a Buffalo Bill fan when you were first 15 years old, you had to wait to age 40 to taste that first playoff win. And I'm sure, it tastes good. And maybe there'll be some more on the way.
Yes, it could be the start of a dynasty. We don't know, Jack, but we do know that they did squeak by the Colts. And with that, let's get to our sports updates, Jack. And we're going to mention them real quick, the scores, and we'll get back into the games more deeper as we go along. Of course, the Bills hold off the Colts 27-24 for their first playoff game, as you said, in 25 years, their first playoff win. So the Rams defeat and beat up the Seattle Seahawks with a great defensive performance, and the Bucs beat a scrappy Washington team 31-23. The NBA, LaMelo Ball becomes the youngest player to have a triple-double. And today in NBA local games, we have the Nuggets at the Knicks, Thunder at the Nets, and the Heat at the Celtics. And last night, Jack, in a kind of a strange game, the Nuggets beat the 76ers 115-103. The top scorer for the 76ers wasn't Embiid or Simmons. It was guard Tyrese Maxey with 39 points. Dwight Howard with 11 rebounds led the team there. The 76ers only had 7 healthy players last night, Jack.
It reminded me of that Knick playoff game years ago when they left the bench and Commissioner David Stern suspended guys for the playoff game against Miami, the decisive playoff game. But at that time, Knick players just stood up for a moment. So that suspension's debatable whether it should have taken place. But the point of the matter is the Knicks were playing with 8 players. And before the game, they had a slogan, 8 men, 1 mission, to try to inspire the forces. And they were leading most of the game. But without a bench, they ran out of gas. And it would have been nice if the Sixers had won with 7 players. It would have really been inspirational. But that's a big handicap in the NBA when you don't have a bench to rest the players.
I mean, Jack, you had Embiid, Simmons, even Curry were all out. Somewhat minor injuries, and the other because of the contact tracing of the COVID. I guess Curry tested positive or something.
Seth Curry.
Yeah, where they ended up having to sit out. Of course, Doc Rivers before the game said it should be played when they only had 7 players. I guess they did the best they could. So There you go with that. Hockey changes the rules and is expected to increase scoring, Jack. The offsides rule has been tweaked. And this, the plane where they go down to attack, to the attack zone, and it could lead to more scoring in games. So the scoring might go up because they don't have to worry about the lanes as much, and would reduce coaches' challenges, Jack. So maybe hockey gets a little more scoring.
They've been listening to us, Mac here. The offside rules sometimes are so restrictive. You get a lot of 3-1, 4-2 games. What would be the matter with 8-6 games on a regular basis? Fans like to see goals scored. I mean, that's the entertaining part of it. That's why soccer hasn't really caught on in the United States, because you have a lot of 1-0, 2-1 games. We like to see scoring. Imagine the NFL. We had a lot of 10-7 games. Imagine in baseball, we had a lot of 1-0 games. People like to see scoring.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, with hockey especially, I mean, it's such a small goal and such a big guy in that goal. It's really, with the padding and stuff, it's very hard to score in hockey. If you get 6 goals, it's considered almost, like you destroyed a team. So, Jack, on our show today, we have Anthony Cervino, who's our fantasy football expert. He'll be giving us the best plays for today, as far as what a DraftKings or a FanDuel entry would be. We'll recap yesterday's games with him, and we'll do the breakdown of today's game with him. And we also have our friend Robert Butler from SportsScope on. It's always enjoyable having him on as we talk about a lot of different topics in football that are relevant and other sports sometimes. So those are our 2 guests today. We got a lot of time, Jack, and I want to talk a little bit about the MVP. Right now, you of course have Aaron Rodgers, who's played great this year. You have, of course, Patrick Mahomes. Maybe even Jackson with the Ravens, and of course Josh Allen with the Bills. And what I don't understand, is it MVP or is it best player? I mean, an MVP is the most valuable player in the league. In other words, without that player, their team may not do as well. And, just common sense says, Jack, that every quarterback on every team would be their most valuable player for the most part. Do you agree with that?
Well, yeah, that's one of my big beefs with MVP awards in sports, especially baseball. I hate to go off the sport, football to baseball, but the years A-Rod got the MVP award when he was with the Texas Rangers, it was ludicrous. They were last place team. They can easily finish in last place without him. So there should be a distinction between a best player of the year award and an MVP award. Maybe do away with the MVP award. Call it the best player and take into account of how valuable he was to his team. And I can never understand that award. And I can't understand why it never takes the postseason into account either. We're going to have the regular season ends and they decide who the MVP award is. He could completely flop in the playoffs, let his team down, yet the guy's still going to be the MVP, whoever got the votes. It just doesn't make sense. MVP should be difference makers for their team.
Right.
What was the difference having them there? Who was more valuable for their team than someone else was for another team, matching guys up against one another? And if a team isn't, at the very least, a contending team, I just don't see the logic of them getting an MVP award.
That's a great point. I mean, you could be, say for instance, Burrow's on the Cincinnati Bengals. Of course, he was their most valuable player, but could they have finished in last without him? Of course they could have. So, I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying.
Well, he was injured. Justin Herbert would be a better example. Okay. He played it out. They were 7-9. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're not at that level where you're actually, making a move in the postseason, at the very least, getting to the playoffs, I don't see where the valuable player award can be given to you. I mean, and as you look at it, Jack, it's mainly, I mean, sometimes you have running backs and once in a while a defensive player every 20 years or 30 years grabs one. But it's mainly a quarterback award, sort of like the Heisman Trophy has become. This year they went with a wide receiver. I was pleasantly surprised. But it's mainly a quarterback award. So when you look at Aaron Rodgers, for say, I mean, that's a good candidate. Without him, the Green Bay Packers probably wouldn't be a playoff team. You look at Jackson, another one who without him, the Ravens wouldn't be where they're at.
Well, that was last year. Jackson
right, but I mean,
any contender this year.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, he could be considered. Josh Allen, yeah, I would go with that.
Yeah.
So I look at Derrick Henry at the Titans, and the Titans are a run-strong team that features a back that got 2,000 yards this year, and without him, they definitely wouldn't be in the playoffs. Without that running back, I mean, the offensive line, of course, is part of that, but he's a little bit unique in his strength and his size and his speed. So I'll be extremely disappointed this year. I mean, not with if Aaron Rodgers is named, I see justification there. But I'd be extremely disappointed if Derrick Henry doesn't win this year, because it will go to show that somebody else besides a quarterback could get it.
Yeah, well, Derrick Henry would be an excellent choice without question, because you have to ask, where would the team be without this player? And the Titans, where would they be? I don't think they would be in the playoffs. But also with the Packers, where would they be without Aaron Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers carries the team. He's the leader to the team. And you just put an average quarterback in Aaron Rodgers' position, the Packers would nearly be where they were, just as the Titans would nearly be where they were if you just put any running back in Derrick Henry's slot. So it's all a matter of opinion. Mac, at the end of the day, who does more for their team than the other guy? Does Derrick Henry mean more to the Titans than Aaron Rodgers means to the Packers?
Right.
For
that's
this given year. And that's a hard one to answer, really.
It sure is. And I think it should come down to those guys. Josh Allen is maybe third to me. I mean, Josh Allen, I think without Josh Allen this year, the Bills probably wouldn't have gone to the playoffs and won a game. And I think, as you said, I think one of the criteria should be that they get into the playoffs, because if they don't, without that guy, they would have made the playoffs anyway. So, I mean, I do agree with that, Jack, 100%.
Not necessarily, Mac. Take next year, for example. Let's say the Jaguars draft Trevor Lawrence as expected. And next season, the Jaguars are 9-7. They go from 1-15 to 9-7 and don't make the playoffs. I don't think the playoffs should be a criteria in judging a guy's value. It's how much he improves the team. What spot would they be in if he wasn't there?
Well, if you say that, you could say that about Herbert, because, I mean, without Herbert, the Chargers wouldn't win a lot of those games. So to me, Jack, I think a criteria should be that you make the postseason, because there has to be some kind of line. If you don't have that line, then you could pick Justin Herbert. You could do exactly what you were talking about a minute ago, where just because he's on a team, they have more wins. That they didn't make the playoffs. Not that he's not valuable, because
Mac, if Tyrod Taylor was the starter, they would have been.
Every quarterback on the team, Jack, is probably the most valuable player. So, I mean, then we're going right back to where we started here.
No, you look at Patrick Mahomes. You can make an argument that Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the NFL. You could make that argument position for position. But when you look at all his weapons on offense, and you look at the Chiefs being 14-2 this year, with all those weapons, you would have had a lot of, the other league quarterbacks would have done very well with the Chiefs. So Patrick Mahomes himself, even though obviously he's extremely valuable at the end of the day, an all-time great in my opinion, I didn't think he was as valuable to the Chiefs as Aaron Rodgers was to the Packers and Derrick Henry was to the Titans.
Well, again, yeah, I see your point there. But again, as you said, without Patrick Mahomes, they might not have had the same record, but they probably would have made it in the playoffs. And of course, divisions come into account. There's a lot of different variables. But I agree that you should consider the playoffs as part of the season. I mean, it's not the regular season, but it's part of the season. And maybe, Jack, they should come up with an award just for best player. I agree with that because that's not necessarily
Right.
MVP. And it's the same with the Heisman Trophy, Jack. It mainly is a quarterback award now because, of course, those are the ones that get the spotlight. I think this year, because there were so many different ones that could have been MVP, Heisman Trophy winners, that they went with a wide receiver instead of a quarterback from Florida, which I think was a good move. As I said, defensive players hardly get MVPs. I think there may be a handful of them. I know Lawrence Taylor got it once. I know Alan Page from the Purple People Eaters got it once. I can't think of any more defensive players that got it, Jack. Can you?
Usually it's not the case. Even in the Super Bowl, Von Miller, I believe, got the MVP award when the Broncos beat the Panthers. Years ago, Chuck Howley of the Cowboys got the award. I think a couple of Cowboys maybe co-won the award. I vaguely remember. In a losing effort, I think, against the Baltimore Colts, if I'm not mistaken. I got to look that one up. I'm going from memory now.
I think that was a win, and I think
maybe they beat the Dolphins. Maybe the year they beat the Dolphins for the Super Bowl.
I think it was Randy White and Martin, the two defensive linemen.
Okay, good one.
Got the award, but I'm not talking about.
Holly flung his helmet across the field in one of the famous scenes when Jim O'Brien kicked a field goal in Super Bowl V for the Colts to beat the Cowboys 16-13. That's why Chuck Howley's sticking in my head.
And again, for the season, Jack, the MVP, those are the only two defensive players I can remember getting the MVP. I don't know if any safeties or cornerbacks got one.
Jake Scott with the Dolphins, I think, got the MVP award when they beat the Washington Redskins, when they had the unbeaten season.
For the year, Jack?
I believe Jake Scott was the MVP.
Of the year.
The safety, not of the year, no.
I'm talking about of the year, Jack, of the regular season. There's only two defensive players I remember, which was Lawrence Taylor and Alan Page, and that was for the MVP for the year.
I don't know what they heard yesterday. Troy Aikman, he said that Sam Darnold, he feels, is the best defensive player he's seen.
The best
what? He played against Lawrence Taylor.
Right.
So that's a heavy-duty statement.
Made
yesterday, Troy Aikman.
Something.
It was a night of statements, Max. Tony Dungy said Tom Brady was the GOAT yesterday.
Yeah,
putting him a few notches down, and he kind of made peace by saying he was the best of all time.
I
created a wave.
I think at the spur of the moment, people make a lot of statements that you could say anything about.
So wait, Max. So when you said the other day, I thought I heard you say I was the best analyst in the business. That was just for the moment.
Well, I got excited for a second, Jack. You have time to calm down and get your
happens.
Yes, but Troy Aikman, I have a lot of problems with Troy Aikman as a commentator, especially when he's doing Cowboy games. But anyway.
Well, he's not partial to Jerry Jones. He's criticized Jerry Jones heavily.
He's partial to the Cowboys. He's partial to the Cowboys, Jack. You hear how he covers them. He comes out and says Dallas Cowboys have the most talented team in the East. And then when the Giants
do, but he also says they're the most dysfunctional.
Yeah.
They do have the most talented team in the East. He's not lying, is he?
He reminds me of Frank Gifford, Jack. He really does.
Frank Gifford was the ultimate homer.
He reminds me of Frank
I had to tell you, I think I mentioned it once before the story. The Jets win the Super Bowl. They're defending Super Bowl champions. They're playing early in the next season. Frank Gifford did the news on CBS, the sports news. We think of him for the Monday Night Football game, but he did the local news. So he quickly goes over the Jets. He said they did a workmanlike job beating the Cincinnati Bengals. But then he goes, but in the Giant game, and he's going on and on and on. And I'm thinking, wait a second. The Jets are defending Super Bowl champs. The Giants are going to be a 500 team at most. And he's gushing about the Giants. And
yeah. Well, Aikman reminds me the same, Jack, because you can hear the tone of his voice. He's very excited when talking about the Cowboys. And when another team's playing, he waits till the end when they're losing to give him credit. So anyway, back to the MVP for a second, Jack. There was one kicker, and I did the trivia question, and and you and somebody else got it wrong. There was one kicker that actually won the MVP. That was Mark Mosley for the Washington Redskins, and that was a strikes shortened year, if you remember. He won a lot of games with his foot. He was the leading scorer for the Redskins that year, and they got to the Super Bowl a lot based off his kicking. And that reminded me of another kicker that back in the early 2000s, when the Patriots were first making their runs, there was a kicker called Adam Vinatieri.
Oh, yes.
And if it wasn't for that kicker, Jack, they wouldn't have won the championships. They wouldn't have won the Super Bowl. Everybody talks about, Tom Brady this, Tom Brady that. Tom Brady was just a game manager at that time. He wasn't the Tom Brady that we know today. They had a great defense of the Patriots. They had a good running game. Brady didn't make mistakes, especially starting out. He did a good job, don't get me wrong. But if it wasn't for Adam Vinatieri and those field goals in the snow, in the championship against the Raiders, this man was incredible. And I don't think he was even considered.
Well, then he went to the Indianapolis Colts. They won a Super Bowl with him as the kicker there. He was their kicker for a lot of years. So and the Patriots and Colts had this great rivalry because of Brady and Manning on opposite sides. But Adam Vinatieri, one of the great kickers of all time.
Hall of Famer, Jack?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
He just retired like about a year ago.
I think.
Well, he's been around forever. Definite Hall of Famer when he's eligible in about 3-4 years.
So today, Jack, we'll get today's game real quick. We want, as I said, we'll be covering it as we go, folks. We'll be covering this well in depth. But in today's game, we got the Ravens at the Titans, we got the Bears at the Saints, and the Browns at the Steelers. Which game, Jack, do you think is going to be the most entertaining of those three?
I like the first one right off the bat, the Ravens and the Titans. That game seems to have overtime written all over it. I don't know why. A lot of people are picking the Ravens because they're playing better towards the end of the year. And for that, I say momentum is overrated. I don't want to hear they're going in with all this great momentum. And look, the Buffalo Bills, no one had more momentum than them going into the playoffs yesterday. And they could have easily lost the game. And the Ravens are very strong at cornerback, so on, and we hear Lamar Jackson getting it together, but they've had a weak schedule at the end of the year. They had that one big Monday night game where they beat the Cleveland Browns in kind of an epic battle, with Lamar Jackson leaving to the locker room, then coming back out to throw, to get the winning touchdown. Them in Tennessee is going to be tooth and nail. I just look for a big game from Derrick Henry, who we talked about before, because it's hard to throw on the Ravens because their secondary is really, really good.
Agreed.
But you can run on them. So I kind of, it's going to be tooth and nail the whole way. What an entertaining game I think that's going to be. But they're at Tennessee, so I give them an edge by a hair. Oh, in overtime. How do you like that? 19-16, the Titans in overtime.
Wow, Jack. I don't know if I agree with that or not. Keith Engel checks in from TGI Sports. Good morning to you too, Keith. And, I like my favorite game is going to be, the Browns at the Steelers. And I'm going to tell you why, Jack. I think that the Steelers offense has lost its physicality. They don't run the ball like they used to. They're basically using the Patriots. The Patriots offense and their great years with Tom Brady, short passes, timing routes, and they throw it deep once in a while. There's no power of Steelers running game like there used to be. And the Browns, one of their strengths is rushing the passer. In the Steelers defense, of course, their front seven is very, very strong. Their defensive backfield not as strong. So it'll be a test of will between the Browns running game and that Steeler front seven. And I think the Browns can match up with the Steelers defensive offense. I like that game. Go ahead.
Sometimes you have to think of two teams as one big unit, what their attitude's going to be. Like yesterday, the Tampa Bay Washington Redskin game, when it was over and the Redskin players had to pack and leave, they were probably saying to one another, it was a good year. We won our division. We made progress. We took a step forward. They weren't devastated by the loss. Okay? they feel this is just one step towards where they want to go to. Had Tampa Bay lost, they would have been devastated. The whole
Yeah.
year's down the drain. Same way I feel about the Browns and the Steelers. If the Steelers lose the game, there's nothing good they could take out of this season despite being 12-4. They started 11-0. They had these expectations. And if they have to go home tonight, okay, having lost to Cleveland, it's going to be a long period between now and next season. But if Cleveland loses, what's their attitude going to be? Hey guys, this was the first time we made the playoffs in a long time. We went 11-5. We did better than most people thought we would. We're ready. We're just going to be getting better. We can't wait till next year. Good season, guys. That's what they'd say to one another. So where's the hunger going to be in that game? Which team really needs it more? Maybe it's going to want it a little more. That's how I sometimes look at it. And I think that is a small factor
Yeah,
involved.
that's a good point, Jack. I agree with that for the most part. I think a lot of teams, once they get there, they're there to win. They're not worried about after the game. Maybe after the game, you're right. I can see the Redskins being that way because Alex Smith was out, and and they had the backup quarterback in, and they still gave the Bucs a game. So I can see that attitude afterwards. I mean, they were congratulating, Henke after the game, but I don't think the Browns getting to the playoffs and playing against the Steelers are going to be happy unless they win this game. I think that the Browns and the Steelers are going to come down to matchups like a lot of big games too. And that's, of course, turnovers play the biggest part. But, I think matchups mean a lot. And if the Browns can establish that running game somewhat, I think the Steelers are in a lot of trouble because I don't think the Steelers' offense is as good as it has been in recent years, Jack.
No, there are questions about Ben Roethlisberger very quietly because they got off to an 11-0 start. So when they were 11-0, people aren't going to say it's Big Ben slipping. But the last few weeks, they've lost 4 of their last 5. In the one game that they won, they came back against Indianapolis to pull it out and score a great win. So there hasn't been enough time for there has been slip talk to gain momentum, okay? But
Right.
there have been whispers, and if Big Ben, for the first time in a long time, maybe the first time in his career, has a lot of pressure on him to perform.
Yeah.
And if he performs very poorly, the Drew Brees type whispers start the talk becomes of him. Well, what's the Browns' succession plan? That's what people are going to look. Is it Mason Rudolph? Is he good enough to take over for Ben Roethlisberger if needed as the franchise quarterback? The talk is going to start.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, and the last game that neither one of us thought was going to be as entertaining will probably be the most entertaining game because we said it won't be, Jack, is the Bears at the Saints. I still don't know about Mitch Trubisky. He looks like he could be a good quarterback. He looks like he's got the potential, especially recently, to be a good quarterback. The Bears' defense is always solid, at least it has been in the last few years. They've lost by field goals hitting uprights, and that's how they lost games in the playoffs. And, of course, the Saints, the big question about Drew Brees is this is last year. Are the Saints going to be playing this game or this postseason for Drew Brees? I don't know. The Saints are confusing me, too. They got a great defense most of the time. Sometimes they slip. They got a great running back in Kamara. They got a good running game. But Brees doesn't look the same. And the Bears is just still a big question mark to me. I mean, congratulations, they made the playoffs. But is that good enough for the Bears fans if they make the playoffs and don't win?
Well, listen, Drew Brees should perform well. They've rested Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas, his great wide receiver. They're both back. Those are 2 massive weapons for Drew Brees. Drew Brees can get by with being nothing more than a game manager with the offensive weapons that he has. And like you mentioned, the Bears do have a good defense, so it's going to prevent the game from getting out of hand. But at the end of the day, the Saints are just going to have a little too much firepower. The Bears are going to hang in for a while. But I think when you get to the second half, the Saints are just gradually going to pull away. I'll be shocked if the Bears win. If the Bears do win, then they're going to Green Bay next week.
Yeah.
And then the Rams are going to be playing at Tampa Bay. So
yeah,
that would be the matchup. Yeah,
that would be great matchups. I mean, the Bears and the Packers, that old time rivalry. But anyway,
Does that mean anything anymore, Mac? A Bear Packer all-time rivalry?
I think it does. Especially when the fans are there. I mean, without the fans, maybe not as much. But I think when the fans are there, it's more of rivalries to me, Jack, are more for the fans than the players, right? I mean, the Red Sox Yankees used to fight on the field. That was a long time ago. You don't really see that too much anymore. You see people trading back and forth jerseys, hugging each other at the end of the game. So I think the rivalries are more for the fans now than they are as for the players, right? I mean, you don't like Philadelphia doesn't like New York, or Dallas doesn't like Washington. I think that has a lot more to do with the fans than it does with the.
I mean, rivalries basically come and go. Like the Chiefs and the Raiders used to have a great rivalry, a lot of years ago, but it kind of fades out. It depends the direction the teams are going on. The Jets and Patriots kind of had a rivalry, Rex Ryan trying to fuel things up with the Patriots, but the Patriots were so much better over the years that kind of faded away. The Packers and Vikings, I think they had a little more of a rivalry, I just feel, than the Bears and Packers. But yeah. I think rivalries come and go depending on the situation. New rivalries emerge as old rivalries fade away.
Well, Jack, backstage right now, we got Anthony Cervino, our fantasy expert that is from Fantasy Football Face-Off. Tremendous site, guys. When you get a chance, go over there and check them out. Anthony and his co-host do a great job, and Anthony does a great job, not just with the fantasy football, but breaking down games and breaking down his thoughts on what's going on. And especially, I bet it's going to be great in the playoffs. So let's bring Anthony up. How are you doing today, Anthony?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
Hey, Anthony.
We're hanging right in there, Anthony. Listen, we were just talking, Anthony, about rivalries, right? I mean, you hear, this team doesn't like that team, and this guy doesn't like that guy. And at the end of the game, of course, when it's all over, they shake hands for the most part, trade jerseys, hug each other, and great game. Do you think the rivalries are more about the teams or about the fans?
That's a really, really good question. I caught the last few minutes of your conversation while I was sitting backstage. And it made me think, because I'm a Cowboys fan. So obviously, like, you have the Eagles, you have that whole division. I always found that Washington was their biggest rival, whereas you had Philly and New York because they're right up, really right up the turnpike.
Right.
And I've been to, and I'll tell you a story here. I've been to quite a few Cowboys games in Texas, and locally, ones that I've driven to. I've been in New England, and I paint my face. I'm one of those guys. And I know people say Philly fans are rough. Outside of getting yelled at and different chants, I've had snow. It's not as bad as people make it out to be. I find that Giants fans are worse, but I really do feel like it's more about the fans today. Because there were 20 years ago, before jersey swaps, there were players who legitimately didn't like each other. And right. We see that now with like AJ Green and Jalen Ramsey, and back years ago when it was Andre Johnson and Cortland Finnegan, guys who got physical on the field. But and that's not a bad thing that there's no real hatred between a lot of players. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it doesn't have the same feel, especially the division ones. I feel like the Colts and Patriots, they're not a rivalry in division, but when Tom Brady and Peyton Manning squared off, that was a rivalry. So I feel like rivalries are coming more and more outside of division, and it's more like recency bias-based rivalries.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back, Anthony, to like the Pittsburgh Steelers and Dallas Cowboys in those great Super Bowls, I mean, they really didn't like each other. You could tell on the field. I mean, they would hit Terry Bradshaw late, and of course they would hassle Roger Staubach and stuff. But as you said, that was outside. But that was because, as in such with the Patriots and the Colts, they were such good teams that you knew eventually they were going to meet in the postseason, and that's where that rivalry spurned from. I think the biggest rivalry right now, if I'm not mistaken, would probably be the Ravens and the Steelers, the most modern day rivalry, division players that seem not to like each other. But the mutual respect is great, but we don't like to see our teams trading jerseys with the other teams.
Guys, I want to discuss a little, if we can, the Colt Buffalo Bill game yesterday. It was such a well-played football game, so entertaining. If I were an Indianapolis Colt fan, I'd be very frustrated. There were questionable decisions, mistakes. I mean, they had 3rd and goal on their 2-yard line. They take a 2-yard loss. It's 4th and goal on the 4-yard line. And Frank Reich takes a chance, goes for the touchdown, misses. They were little within 2 minutes of the half. So those were 3 points that were just left out there that the Colts didn't snatch. And then Buffalo takes the ball down the field, and they have 4th down on their own on the Indianapolis 27. I think it was 4th and 4. And everyone knows that Buffalo's trying to draw Indianapolis offside. And lo and behold, they do it. Indianapolis falls for it, and Buffalo gets a touchdown. That's a 10-point swing, not to mention another Indianapolis field goal attempt hitting the post. That's 13 points left on the table. But then at the end of the game, Indianapolis actually has a shot at getting to field goal range. Buffalo cuts off the sideline where Phillip Rivers can't complete a pass where a receiver could go out of bounds. But Phillip Rivers doesn't try to go long in the meantime, and they can't quite get into field goal range. It had to be such a frustrating loss for Indianapolis because the game was there for them to win. I mean, what do you think of that, Anthony?
Listen, I think you're spot on with a lot of it, and let's start with the field goal kicking. Blankenship 1 for 2. Obviously, that miss was huge. My biggest issue outside of the kicker, the play call, Frank Reich. And Frank Reich came from Philadelphia. Look what Doug Peterson did in the same situation when you could have changed the ball game. Mike McCarthy in the season finale against the Giants goes for it instead of kicking the field goal. I know that this league has become more aggressive, but you're costing yourself games. I know Tomlin for a little bit with some of his 2-point conversion decisions were costing Pittsburgh some victories in the past few years, and that's why this is their first playoff appearance in 2 or 3 years. They were a lock for the playoffs for a good 10 years.
Coaches coaching scared because of analytics, because they have people upstairs, GMs, showing them the analytics, telling them what they should do. That's my impression, not just in football and baseball as well. Coaches and managers, I mean, they're just coaching the game. They don't want to make a mistake.
I mean, everything is so much under the microscope with social media and how many reporters are covering each team, never mind each game. It's not 3 or 4 networks. There might be 100 reporters at every NFL game. So everything is, and you have social media with the fans, and there's a lot of pressure on the ownerships and general managers. Football is a juggernaut, but there's a price to pay when you're in the public eye.
Definitely,
yeah,
definitely. But Anthony, you made it. Go ahead, Anthony.
Oh no, go on. I lost track of what I was going to say.
Okay, well, I want to go back to the point you made. All right, listen. I know 4th and 1, you should be able to make. You should have confidence in your team to make that. But the other team's there too, and they're confident they're going to stop you. So not tying the game or taking points to get you closer to me. I mean, I don't care what the analytics say. You live to fight another day. And if you're going to pass up on these chances to tie a game or maybe go ahead by 1 instead of 4, I mean, to me that's crazy. And I think that maybe because of this year, and there's been a lot of things where they've gone for it, like you say, and not taking the field goals. Maybe they learn something in next year. These teams, or maybe even the teams in the playoffs now, start playing football basically where let's live to fight another player or another series.
You know what? I don't even know if I put, because Phillip Rivers is going to take a lot of heat because, he's aging. He doesn't have the deep ball. Phillip Rivers had a really good game yesterday.
Yeah.
when they were going forward in that series where they should have kicked a field goal, one of the play calls, I think it was a second down run to Jonathan Taylor, and I don't know if it was supposed to go to the outside, but it went to the outside. With the tight ends that they have in Indianapolis, tight ends yesterday, they were tearing apart Buffalo's defense. They're all mismatched nightmares. We look at Mo Alley Cox, I believe, is a former basketball player, almost built like Antonio Gates. Jack Doyle's very versatile. You can line him up all over the formation. And then Trey Burton, another terrific tight end. You could put him in the slot. I think they should have went to the tight end, had them all on a field, and somehow maybe a play action fake to Jonathan Taylor and try to work the ball into one of the tight end positions.
That's a great point. So, Anthony, you've called this during the year. You say the Rams have the Seahawks number, and the Seahawks they didn't look this year as they did in the past. They're missing something. Either it's defense, maybe it's just a running game, which they really didn't have this year. The Giants shut them down, and now the Rams, they come to play the Rams with a backup quarterback, and the defense, for the most part, shuts down the Seahawks offense again. Do you think it's the running game that's missing the strong offensive line they used to have?
Wait, you broke up there for a second.
Okay, with Seattle, do you think maybe it's because the offensive line is not as strong as it was, and that they don't have that running back that can control, the clock and the yardage? Is that why Seattle has taken a step back this year on their offense?
I don't know what happened, because Seattle, if you remember the first half, they were dropping 30, 40 points a game because they had to outscore you to win. And then the defense started coming together. They traded for Carlos Dunlap. Their pass rush really took off, and all of a sudden their defense, which started the year historically bad, became a top 10 defense to close the season, and their offense was actually a bottom 10 offense. So they do complete 180s, and the big question is why? Because if you go to I look at Pro Football Focus for a lot of my advanced stats, and at the end of the year, every year, they do an article. They do a before-season offensive line rankings and a postseason offensive line rankings. Seattle finished, I believe, 14th or 16th. Whatever it was the best since Russell Wilson has been in the NFL. So this is the best line, according to Pro Football Focus, I believe, that Russell Wilson has ever had.
Russell Wilson was under the gun all game yesterday. And what surprised me, too, is Russell Wilson is normally mobile enough to get away. Right. He couldn't escape yesterday. That pick six, what on earth happened there? When he threw the pick six on a screen pass, the safest pass he could throw.
Listen, whatever's going on with Russell Wilson, if you look at the games that they've lost in the second half, Russell Wilson, I believe, has had a turnover, at least one turnover in all of them. You're right on Russell Wilson's mobility. Maybe he's playing banged up. I don't know what's going on. His wide receivers, you look at Lockett and Metcalf, they have David Moore, who's a good three, a couple of good tight ends. These are the best weapons that Russell Wilson had, at least since those Marshawn Lynch teams. So I don't know. I don't have an answer for that.
Jamal Adams putting John Wolford out of the game with that shoulder hit to the head, cheap shot, and not a complete accident.
By the way, Jamal Adams handled himself with John Wolford afterwards, it seems like that the quarterback shook it off and said it was clean. I don't think he got penalized for it.
Well, the league takes a look at it after, so they'll determine,
10 years ago, that's a clean hit.
Definitely. So what do you think? What do you think on the game with Washington and Tampa? I mean, I didn't think Washington had a chance with Smith not starting. The backup comes in. He's scrappy. He keeps the team alive. Tampa the defense seemed to let down a little bit when they have one of the better defenses in the league, and it looked like Washington might have exposed them a little bit, or maybe they just thought it was going to be, the same as with Alex Smith in there. So Washington, good game maybe, and the Bucs, maybe they have a little problems on defense, Anthony.
Well, the Buccaneers defense, they started the year really good, but clearly, down the stretch, they held it together a little bit more. And then in week 17, Atlanta started hanging points on them. And then obviously we saw Washington did yesterday. On the secondary, I have questions about. Is their front seven a top 5 unit in the league? Absolutely. You're not going to run on Tampa Bay. And they're also going to sack the quarterback. It's the secondary. That's how you're going to beat them. In terms of Taylor Heineke and Alex Smith, up until a day or two ago, Alex Smith looked like he was going to be the starter, or at least they were going to platoon and to completely deactivate Alex Smith. I don't think Tampa Bay was exactly ready for it. And also, Heineke is a little bit more mobile. He led Washington in rushing yesterday with 46 yards. Yeah. So he's a different quarterback than Alex Smith. You don't really have to worry. And Alex Smith was a much better athlete earlier in his career, but after the first gruesome leg injury, and now he's dealing with the calf, he's not a mobile quarterback anymore. So you could just tee off on him.
Yes. Was yesterday a good sign for Tampa Bay? They were expected to dominate Washington, and they didn't really do it. They were never in any serious danger losing the game, even though it did get close at the end. I mean, is it a good sign the way the Tampa Bay offense functioned against a good Washington defense? Or should there be more concern that Heineke, really an unknown quarterback, was lighting it up at times against Tampa Bay's secondary?
I'm gonna be concerned about the secondary, like I said, because they've been exposed a lot this season. But do I think that they're good enough? Is Tom Brady and this offense good enough to overcome it? Can they outscore most teams in this league? Yeah, and that's what's going to happen. This game unfolded almost the way I kind of projected it to. Washington was going to keep it close, but eventually that Tampa Bay receiving core, as good as that secondary is with Washington, they're eventually going to overcome. Everybody was healthy. Leonard Fournette, when people are expecting Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette gets the workload, goes for 93 yards and a touchdown. Different running back than Ronald Jones, who really ended the season as their starter. Tom Brady, 381 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, the stat lines for all these players. You shut down. Rob Gronkowski did nothing. 0 catches, 1 target. I bet you Washington game plan to take out Gronk. Well, who steps in? Cameron Brate goes 4 receptions for 80 yards, the backup tight end.
Yeah, because of Brady, Tampa Bay is the most intriguing team in the NFL this year. And if things play out as expected today and New Orleans beat Chicago, Tampa Bay has to play at New Orleans next week. And New Orleans beat them pretty handily in their 2 meetings this year. Is there anything different now? Has Tampa Bay improved substantially since those losses, or has New Orleans taken a gentle step backwards? Could it be different?
If they play the Saints?
If they play the Saints.
I'm worried. And I picked Tampa Bay to win the Super Bowl when Tom signed there in the preseason on my show and wherever I get to pick these things. I like Tampa and the Chiefs. I think that would be a storyline-driven game with the 2 quarterbacks. But, the Saints in week 1, okay, you can make the excuse. It was Tom's first game. But, in the middle of the season when it happens, and you get pounded 38-3.
Yeah.
That was a shocker how easy the Saints handled them. Yeah.
Even if they get the Bears beat Tampa Bay. Nick Foles beat Brady already.
Yeah, it's very true.
Just bad mojo for Tom Brady, I think.
So
Eli's going to come out of retirement and sign with the Rams.
Yeah.
So, Anthony, let's get to Sunday's games, today's games. We got the Ravens at the Titans, the Bears at the Saints, and the Browns at the Steelers. I have a good feeling about the Browns in this game, and I'm going to tell you why. I think it comes down to matchups. And I think that the Steelers' strength, if you could even call it that now, is their passing game. They don't have a physical running game anymore. That's the Browns' forte. They got a great pass rush. I think that the Browns' running game against that Steelers front 7 is going to be the key to the game. If the Browns can run on the Steelers, I think the Browns win this game outright. I don't see the Steelers with a great offensive performance. I mean, I just don't see a running back coming in there and taking time off the clock and maybe picking up them first downs. What are your thoughts, Anthony?
Yeah, you're right with Pittsburgh's run defense, because normally you think about the Steelers' run defense and they're really, really, they're one of the best in the league. To close the season, when you're talking about Nick Chubb going 108 and a touchdown in Week 17, Jonathan Taylor rushed for 74 yards, Nyheim Hines 44 the week before that, Gio Bernard 83 and a touchdown, or 2 touchdowns total. The only team that they really managed to shut down in that last 4 games was Buffalo's running backs, and everybody stops them. So in the final 3 games, it's injuries, especially on that defensive side of the ball. They're going to be exposed, by a good Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. That's going to be an issue. I like Pittsburgh to win this game, and it's not because Kevin Stefanski is really going to be out and Joe Bitonio, he's an all-pro. He's a big-time loss, but the line only swung 3 points. It opened at 2.5, 3, and I had it at 6. And that was following the news. So there wasn't a tremendous swing. What worries me is that in Week 17, the Steelers did not play T.J. Watt or Ben Roethlisberger. The Browns were more or less at full strength. And the Steelers also did not have Joe Hayden and Eric Ebron. They were on a COVID list. So you're down 4+ starters, and the Browns barely squeaked by.
Let me play devil's.
Rudolph threw for 300 yards against that secondary.
Let me play devil's advocate. What happened a week ago when Seattle played the Rams?
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Never
true.
know week to week.
Yeah, but with Seattle and the Rams, you have Jared Goff and Russell Wilson and 2 competent head coaches. Like when you look at the history between these 2 franchises, you couldn't really say that.
Anthony, no one likes to see John Welford get injured and leave the game. But playing devil's advocate, what would have happened had he stayed in the game? Would it have been any different, perhaps?
Maybe, but that Rams defense, they think they might be the best defense in the NFL. And that's good enough with the way Cam Akers is running the football. You could probably put Blake Bortles back there, and they could have won that game.
And what happened that Joff went out? I found it hard to believe Bortles wasn't suited up. So who knows who would have quarterbacked for them?
So Anthony, back to today's games. We got the Ravens and the Titans. Again, I think it comes down to matchups. If the Titans can run the ball against the Ravens, they got a good chance. If the Titans can slow down Jackson, they might have a chance. I like the Ravens big time here.
Yeah, I like the Ravens a lot. And a lot of people like Tennessee here. Tennessee, in their past 2 meetings, they're obviously 2-0. Tennessee took care of business in the playoffs last year, bounced the Ravens, who everybody thought was the best team in football. And then earlier this season, Tennessee won. But the difference is this time around, Tennessee won by 6 points in overtime. And that was a Baltimore team, if you remember, earlier in the season, they were out of the playoff mix. This is a different Ravens team. They're firing on all cylinders. I see a lot of points in this game, but eventually I think this Ravens put it away. And the biggest key to this game and really to the second half of Baltimore's season was J.K. Dobbins.
Yes, definitely.
Well, Tennessee doesn't have too good of a pass rush, but if they can just contain Lamar Jackson from running, I give them an excellent chance.
It's a good point.
Yeah. They certainly have a chance, and it would not shock me if they won the game. But I still like Baltimore to win and cover.
And then the last one, Anthony, we got the Bears at the Saints. I still don't know about Mitch Trubisky. I don't know if he can be a very good quarterback or not. Drew Brees has looked a little old at times, but he's got his rest in. Kamara, the Bears got to stop Kamara, and then they got to contain that passing attack. I would love to see the Bears pull up an upset here, but I think the Saints got this game.
Yeah, the Saints are going to come in healthy, and who knows how it'll work out, because how many games this year have we seen Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, and Michael Thomas even on the field together? Right. So maybe there's a little bit of a slow start, but I do think the Saints are going to win this game. I think they should really dominate this game. If Chicago keeps it close, they could pull off a big-time upset. But just almost like Tampa Bay and Washington, eventually the Saints are going to be too much.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. So, Anthony, thank you again for coming in on our Sunday morning football preview show. Great site at Fantasy Football Face-Off, guys. Check it out. They do a tremendous job, not only in their expert with the fantasy, which we didn't even get a chance to get to because the games are going, but this is the kind of talk you hear over there. They break down the games. They talk about the NFL and the news, and they do a great job with it. So check them out when you get a chance. Anthony, again, thanks for stopping in. We love having you.
Absolutely. Have a good
Thanks,
day, guys.
Anthony. Good stuff.
You too. So there you go, Jack. Anthony Cervino with Fantasy Football Face-Off. Coming up next after our quick little break here, we got the great Robert Butler, not Robert Palmer, Jack. You always call him Robert Palmer. But the great Robert Butler, who does a great job at Sports Scope. Great show there, and we'll have them next on board. So we'll be right back after this, guys. Stick with us, and we'll be bringing you more of the great coverage that we provide every Sunday with our great guests. So we'll be right back after this.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah, 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Okay.
You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're on Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. So, Jack, we just had our great host, Anthony Cervino, covering fantasy football and breaking down the games with us. And he always does a great job for us. And speaking of that, Jack, we have one of our favorite guests that come on every week, every Sunday from Sports Scope, Robert Butler, who does a great job in all the topics that we cover in football and in all sports, really. He's very good at all that stuff. So we always have him on every Sunday at around this time, around 9 o'clock. So let's welcome Robert Butler and let's bring him up.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Robert,
Good morning.
bring you up here close so they can get a good look at you. Man. So, Robert, interesting games yesterday, interesting games today. We talked to Anthony a little bit about who would be your underdog pick for today, Robert. I like the Browns. I think Jack may be hedging towards the Titans. He thinks the Titans will do it today. Who do you think?
I like the Titans. I just think they're 3.5-point underdogs at home. And if you put them on a neutral field, usually you get about 3 just for being at home. There's going to be about 5,000 fans in there. So they're about 7.5-point underdogs, a team they've beaten twice. I went back and looked at the injuries that Baltimore had in the last game they played. I thought Tennessee was going to lose that game. And it was Brandon Williams and Calais Campbell were out. Then I went back and looked at the injuries they had with the Cleveland game, who ran the ball really well on them this year. The second game, that Monday night, the wild shootout. Both of those guys were back. Cleveland had a good running game against them. Jackson, this is a big game for him. Tennessee likes to close off the corners and makes him go through the reads. Of course, the pass rush is terrible. If he could just make a few reads, he could beat Tennessee easily in the passing game. But I just don't think he can do it. He may be able to pull it off and get that playoff losing drought off of him, and not create that narrative, not the Peyton Manning narrative the first few years of his career. But I got a feeling that Tennessee is going to play up that underdog role, and they're going to pull off this win today. Could go the other way, but if I had to pick one, I think it'll be that. There's too many injuries with Cleveland and Chicago. What's his name? Mooney's out. That's one of their rising wide receivers. You look at that. Pittsburgh's rested. They're at home. Was it 38-7 last game? I'm just not sure about that. Pittsburgh.
No, I was thinking, and this is just my own analysis, Tennessee doesn't have that good of a pass rush.
No.
So I feel maybe they're going to be just more interested in containing Lamar Jackson so he doesn't run against them and more or less challenging him to complete passes. And maybe that works in their favor. At the very least, it puts a lot more pressure, I think, on Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, to make the throws in the end zone, the score. They're going to have a bend but don't break mentality. I'm sure he'll still run for 100 yards. J.K. Dobbins playing really well. I think he'll run for over 100 yards today. But I just think maybe that last touchdown may come up short and Tennessee wins in a thriller. I did not think that that game would be that close with them and the Colts yesterday. It could come that way, and this could tilt to the home team. But if I had to pick an underdog, I think they're going to win.
Was Buffalo truly the better team yesterday, or did they just get certain breaks by Indianapolis leaving points, on the table, questionable decisions, a terrible offside call when Buffalo normally would be trying a 44-yard field goal on 4th down? Buffalo drew them offside. I mean, the oldest trick in the book. It never works. You see teams try it all the time to try to draw another team offside. Everyone knows that's what they're trying to do, yet Indianapolis fell for it.
Yeah, I feel like Buffalo's the better team. Now, they played, in different phases. They can run the ball better. But, that Buffalo's got a better quarterback. They have a more opportunistic defense, overall opportunistic. But Buffalo don't have the running game that they have. And I don't quite think they got the offensive line that a Colts team has.
Yeah, Robert, I think the better team won, whether it's Briggs or not. I think the Colts are a great team. I think they're going to raise a lot of heck in the next few years. They're built to win. They got a great offensive line, a good running game, and their defense isn't too shabby. So I think they'll be there for the next few years. So let's get to a few topics that I want to talk to you about. And, of course, the big news in the beginning of the week was what Philadelphia did in their game and, how they put that backup quarterback in the fourth quarter when they still had a chance to win. And it goes to a broader question, Robert. Mm-hmm. Does an organization, any sports organization, we'll talk about football here, have the right to tank games? I mean, I know the organization wants to do what's best for the organization in their future. But as fans, we pay a lot of money. We watch a lot of TV that has a lot of sponsors that, supposedly we support. And we expect to see, the best players in the game, whether they're in it or not. So is this a ripoff to the fans? I mean, I don't feel bad, that for the teams that didn't get in, the Giants and the Cowboys, because they made their bed, they lay in it. Mm-hmm. But I kind of feel bad for the Eagles fans that, root for their team to win. I know some want, some say, yeah, we got a better draft pick. Who cares? I mean, so you moved up 3 slots. Yeah. And I think they're just trying to put a good spin on it. Me, I know as a fan, I don't care if my team has only won 1 game all year. And that last game, I want them to win. That's why I'm their fan. So you think an organization has the right to tank games? Well,
yesterday we seen Buffalo. They won the game yesterday. First win in 25 years. Jim Kelly, back in 1983, did not want to go to Buffalo. He said that. There was a documentary about this on that 83 draft, one of the greatest drafts of all time. And the team, the city grew on it. A lot of these Cleveland, they're the first appearance. It's hard for them. Once you start getting on a bad run of coaches, like a Cleveland, a Buffalo, other organizations, even a Detroit, free agents don't want to go there. So you have to have a way to draft these players. Look at Jacksonville. They had to trade away, and they feel like they hit their pinnacle with a guy like Blake Bortles. So they traded away players like Jalen Ramsey and everything. Now they have hope. The draft creates hope. It's hard to get that. You don't want teams that will be so bad that nobody wants to go there, and they're just fading into existence. Now, look how competitive this league is. So a part of that is you're going to get rid of good players and play young players. The players are never going to tank, but the organization's going to tank to get better players because there's no hope. I mean, do you want 2 or 3 teams to win it every year, or do you want a competitive balance? I know it's having a long game approach, a business-like approach, and me building this thing is you have to be patient and go. It's called the growing pains, So I'm okay with that. And quite frankly, Philadelphia, they're from 6 to 9. I don't think Jalen Hurts is the answer. Do you feel like that Carson Wentz and that organization don't gel well? There's players separated from Doug Peterson, the head coach on that. So maybe you have to get rid of him. Jalen Hurts is not the answer. What if a Justin Fields falls to you? What if one of those other quarterbacks that your scouts rate, maybe the South Dakota guy, he falls to you at 6? You have an opportunity to start over. 9, that might not be there. So, I could say a lot about Joe Judge. That comment he made about worried about another team losing, that was so unbilled Parcells-like.
I don't think Philadelphia. Rob, I don't think Philadelphia, it would be a good idea for them to draft another quarterback. They don't need that. I mean, with the controversy, the dissension, that would be insanity. Nate Sudfeld was the guy they put in for Jalen Hurts, but he's been on the Eagle team for the last 3 years. He was Nick Foles' backup for the Super Bowl. Carson Wentz was out of the Super Bowl because of an injury. Had Nick Foles gotten hurt during that game when Nick Foles was a Super Bowl MVP, Nate Sudfeld would have been in there. And imagine him performing like that on the Super Bowl stage. That would have been crazy. I mean, I think the problem was that Nate Sudfeld was so bad. had he looked semi-respectable in there, people wouldn't be getting that hyper. But as things were unfolding, we were looking and saying, this guy is terrible. What's he doing as an NFL quarterback? I mean, he was so inept. That's what made it painful to watch, and that's why people use the term tanking. No one actually tanked the game. Maybe Doug Peterson really felt that Nate Sudfeld could get the job done. And when a guy's been on your team a long time, on your roster, maybe you want to reward him. Maybe that was Nate Sudfeld's goodbye in a meaningless game to the Eagles. And Doug Peterson's thinking, the guy's been a good soldier. He's been on the bench forever. Let me reward him and give him a little playing time, at the end of the year. I mean, that could have been his logic.
Come on, Jack. So you do that. You do that. And all those players that have been busting their butts the whole game, the Eagles were in that game and could have easily won that game. And all these players that were in there on the defense and offensive line and the running backs were busting their butts the whole game. So let's give Sudfeld a goodbye.
Who knew he was going to be that bad?
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? He was there for 3 years, Jack. They know what kind of quarterback.
And Washington drafted him first out of college. He was a 6th-round draft choice.
Come on. That's
the optics, guys. If you wanted to lose the game, I think it would just look better if he would have simply just started the guy.
Yes.
Give this new at the beginning when you take him out in the middle. It just the optics look so bad. Now
you said something, Robert, I want to get into a little bit with you. Okay, you said, well, this gives teams hopes and that, other teams can become competitive. But if you really look at the NFL, is it? I mean, the Patriots dominated, right? And they didn't get first-round draft choices. The Steelers dominate. They don't get first-round draft choices. The Saints dominate. They don't get first-round draft choices. All these lower teams are getting first-round draft picks, like the Lions, like the Jets, like a lot of different teams, and they're not going anywhere still. So I understand what you're saying, that the theory is great, that, you're going to get the best player. But if you're a good player, a la Cincinnati, and you get Burrows, you're on a bad team. So what happens? Do they fire the coach? They fire the GM. They bring in a new coach. They bring in a new GM. And it's a cycle. There aren't too many teams that build from the ground up and end up becoming dynasties or teams that are good for a long time. Look at the 49ers, right? Drafted great, had a great front four. They went to the Super Bowl. This year they won 4 games, 6 games?
Yeah.
All I'm saying, Robert, is that to me, and in my opinion, good teams know how to win. They know they have the culture there. They have the coach there. They have a system there. A first-round draft pick is not going to change that. So to me, what I'm saying as far as a right to tanking is it doesn't really work. Okay, it doesn't. Remember, we were going to tank for Tua, but they didn't tank. They came in and they played hard and they won them last few games. And then we got Fitzpatrick, and then Tua comes along, and the Miamis have a good team. Isn't it more about the coach and the system in there than it is about draft picks?
Yeah, I'm not a big guy. I'm not a big favor of like a Washington. Go out and just get the early Daniel Snyder days where he would just get as many free agents as he can. Now, forget about them fitting your system. If you're in a 4-3 or a 3-4, you take a guy like Albert Hainsworth, you give him $100 million, and he don't even play that normal type of defense, and he said he wasn't going to do it. But you make the check so big, he just couldn't. You make the guy an offer he can't refuse. I'm a big believer in getting scouts, getting the proper general management. That's why I like to frame my show. Look at it from a general manager's perspective to have a good foundational work with the organization. I think that's a big problem with the NBA. I've heard and read that it's a big issue with the East teams in the NBA, and it's hard to get the right organization where you got a meddling owner or whatnot. But mention the Saints. I mean, these guys used to have bags over their heads. The nickname used to be the Aints. They were terrible during their Archie Manning days, and it took them a while to find the right people. It starts with ownership, but once you do get those right people, you're going to have to get a higher draft pick some point. And I will say this, Miami were setting the table to tank. The players don't tank. They're playing their guts off because everybody's playing for a job. So the idea was to get tank, nod, but those young players played so hard they won 3 or 4 games. and then they set the tone for this year. They turned around the organization.
No one is tanking. No one. All
No.
year long, all we heard, the Jets in Jacksonville, are they tanking for the number 1 pick? Well, let me tell you something. If the coaches were tanking, Doug Marrone, Jacksonville Jaguar coach, fired at the end of the year. Adam Gase, New York Jet coach, fired at the end of the year. And can you imagine one of those fired coaches going public and saying the owner wanted them to lose the game? If that happened, the NFL would step in and maybe strip the team of that draft choice.
Yeah.
It would be criminal. But none of the coaches are saying that. As fans, we want to see the team sometimes lose so they could get a Trevor Lawrence. Look, I'm a Jet fan.
Yeah.
When they beat the Rams, I was numb. I didn't know what to feel. On one end, I had a lot of pride and a smile on my face that my team could pull off such an upset and beat a quality team like the Rams. On the other end, I'm saying, oh, no. Am I really happy about this? Because I really wasn't. So for my way of thinking, I wasn't rooting for my team to win. But the players out there were giving it all they had. The coaches were giving it all they had. Because of that Greg Williams blitz, we thought the Jets were tanking. But no one told Greg Williams to run that blitz. And Adam Gase didn't call it off. And that's one of the reasons he's the next coach now at the Jets.
So since you bring that up, Jack, Robert, let's get into the Jets for a second.
Okay.
So
I got all my notes here.
What?
I made my list and I checked it twice.
It's great because Jack doesn't even know the topics I'm asking you because I want him to be raw. You know, I like it when Jack's raw. So he segued
anyway on him.
Beautifully. He segued into this question. So what should the Jets, what should they look for in a new head coach? I mean, are we looking for a quarterback whisperer again? Are we looking for an offensive coach? What should the Jets be looking for in your opinion?
Me personally, guys, I would get a former head coach to be the head coach. I would look at the college game. Maybe a guy like a Dan Mullen. It seems like it's really annoying. That's a Florida head coach. He's irritated with Florida. They have boosters that are in their ears a lot. They have players that seem to get in trouble all the time. He's really annoyed with that. He seems to be annoyed with the recruiting. This guy developed Dak Prescott, won big they got the number 1 team in the country, Mississippi State, when you're playing against Alabama, legendary coach. Somebody like that. I looked at somebody that is a good communicator, not a Matt Patricia, not Adam Gase, a guy that just seems to be combative constantly with the players and not being straight up with them. And I look at other guys that are available that's been doing interviews. Jim Caldwell, somebody like Marvin Lewis, guys that have won on bad organizations in the past. They've got to the playoffs. Jim Caldwell's been to the Super Bowl. He coached, he was offensive coordinator for the Ravens when they won the Super Bowl, Joe Flacco. You see how bad Patricia was. Caldwell won at Detroit. Maybe there's other issues, underlying issues there with scouting or whatnot. Somebody with a head coaching experience. Maybe even look at a guy like a Matt Campbell. He comes from Iowa State, does a lot with less. I would probably try to look at the college game. You see that working now in the NFL? Get somebody like that, a good communicator that's going to be straight up with the team, an energy guy. People keep mentioning the guy that's from the defensive coordinator from San Francisco, Salai. Well, he is a coordinator, though. Get somebody with some head coaching experience. There's plenty of guys out there that are interested. And, of course, Bill Cowher, I don't know if those rumors have went down.
No, he doesn't want to coach.
Boomer Esiason's kind of been quiet lately. So I think Bill Cowher maybe just.
What about Eric Bieniemy? I mean, he's got to get his opportunity at some point. You say get a head coach, but if a guy's never given an opportunity to be a head coach, you're not going to be able to pluck him from the former head coach's ranks. And there's a reason these guys are former head coaches. In a lot of cases, they didn't quite get it done. And college coaches traditionally haven't been that successful as head coaches in the NFL. And this is the way I look at it. I don't know who's most qualified. I don't know, and I'm not certainly qualified to say. But if a Deshaun Watson wants the Houston Texans in the worst way to hire Eric Bieniemy, why not the Jets? Why don't they pluck Eric Bieniemy? Look, he's been Andy Reid's right-hand man for the last 8 years. I don't care whether Eric Bieniemy calls the plays or not, because we all know Andy Reid's going to want to call the plays no matter who's next to him. But if you could be with a guy for 8 years and be his right-hand man and have that kind of success with him, give Eric Bieniemy a shot.
Yeah, Eric Bieniemy from Kansas City, he's going to have his choice, I think. Him and a guy like Arthur Smith here in Tennessee, he's getting a lot of talk. And now Eric Bieniemy, if I'm Eric Bieniemy, just speaking for me, I'm going to talk to the Chargers first. I mean, no offense, guys. You got a great pass rush. You got Justin Herbert. They got plenty of money under the cap. I mean, they are playoffs next year ready, this team. When you got a quarterback like Herbert on a rookie contract, the sky's the limit. You got a guy like Bosa. You got a fair secondary. I would talk to them first before I talk to the Jets or Jacksonville. That's just me.
So Robert, back to your point about getting a former head coach. And not that I disagree with the thought process there, but if you look at the great head coaches of the league today, Mike Tomlin was a special teams coach. Andy Reid was an offensive line coach. Bill Belichick was a defensive coordinator for the Giants, so he was a coordinator. I feel that former head coaches, going back to Jack's point, unless they're truly successful and retired, they left, say, like Joe Gibbs, and they just had too much of football for a while, or Bill Parcells when he went back to the Cowboys after he retired. They know how to build a winning organization and winning team. But if you have somebody like Jack's talking about Bieniemy, or you look at the Ravens defensive coordinator, can't think of his name right now, but he's been looked at a couple of times, and you do have teams that do have really good special teams, and there's something to be said about special teams because they got to coach both offensive and defensive players and have them, communicate with them. So, you talk about college. We have, Jacksonville Jaguars right now looking at the former Ohio State College.
Urban Meyer,
And he's pretty much got the team if he wants it. But if you look at the college coaches that have come up, the Lou Holtzes, Pete Carroll, when he first came up, of course, he ended up becoming a great coach. But even the great, Nick Saban, they have problems fitting in at the professional level, and I think there's two reasons for that, Robert. One, of course, you're coaching men instead of boys, who you can get them excited and motivated in a certain way, and two, because of restrictions. You recruit your players at a college level as the head coach. You're the guy. I mean, you're the representative. But when you go on the pro level, you have other people doing that job for you, and may not only be not the person you thought of, but maybe a person that you wouldn't want on your team for some reason or another. So while I agree, somebody like a Meyer might be successful, well, we saw Saban, it wasn't. And if you're going to hire a former head coach, and you mentioned Bill Cowher, Jack did, somebody like that, yeah, definitely. He knows.
No. I said he was done.
Right.
Oh, I would bring in Bill Cowher, the New York Minute, over any.
I have a name.
That's me.
I'm not cutting you off, Mac. I have a name that hasn't come up at all, and he's still coaching on the college level at Arizona State. Herm Edwards. No one mentions Herm Edwards. NFL experience, a ton of personality, and a guy who's easy to get along with as well. And he's had some success as an NFL head coach.
Yeah, that's a good point you make there, Jack. And going back to Nick Saban, these guys, if you get a quarterback and you got a great defensive mind coach, good things happen. Bill Cowher, I was talking about Bill Cowher, but he didn't win a Super Bowl until he got Ben Roethlisberger. He got to it with Neil O'Donnell. There's only one Joe Gibbs. And then, we talked about college. Remember Jimmy Johnson, Bill Cowher, Pete Carroll. Some guys can make the transition, I believe. I think Urban Meyer can. But he's a 6-year guy. He's 5 or 6 years. He burns himself out, and then he leaves.
And Rob is right about one thing about the LA Charger job. A head coach looks at who the quarterback is if he has his choice. Who wouldn't want to go forward Justin Herbert? But reportedly, New York is Eric Bieniemy's first choice. The Jets. That's the job he wants most, reportedly. But let me say this. If Eric Bieniemy came to New York and Sam Darnold really developed into an elite quarterback with him as the head coach, that would stamp Eric Bieniemy forever as a first-class NFL coach. Even if the Jets didn't win, but if Sam Darnold developed under Eric Bieniemy, that would be a big boost for Eric Bieniemy's profile.
Well,
Go ahead.
let's mention one other name before we push on to the next topic. You know, Rex Ryan is still out there, and he had some success.
Rex
Ryan.
We enjoy watching him on the ESPN.
Yeah, I really don't. So I wish he would go to the Jets.
No one's reached out to Rex.
Now, he's been fired twice. He's defensive coordinator material. Some guys, I will say this. Some coaches, I just don't think they're head coach material. Rex Ryan, good defensive coordinator. I remember him at the Ravens. I just don't think he's head coach. Remember, he's got fired from Buffalo.
Championship twice.
No, he did take the Jets to two AFC championship games.
But the longer he stayed there and meddled,
the
they went downhill after that, though.
Yeah, but
that was his influence.
But if you look at the history of the New York Jet head coaches, he had more success than most.
Yeah,
true. It's true. So let's talk about the other New York team for a little bit here. We got Dave Gettleman. Everybody thought he was going to get fired, and I knew it wasn't going to happen. Gettleman has done too much as far as drafting and made some big signings this year to improve the Giants. Even Leonard Williams has come to fruition from that everybody complained about, and of course picking up Ryan and Bradbury, the middle linebacker from the Green Bay Packers, who is an unbelievable middle linebacker, and his draft choices are playing. I don't understand, and the Gettleman bashing. I mean, I understand the Giant fans want to win, and they want to win now. But it looks like he's got a great partnership with Judge. It looks like they're on the same page, and they did improve. They might not have a lot of wins, but the team played competitive all year pretty much, except for maybe 2 games. What are your thoughts on Gettleman and why he's bashed so much, Robert?
Well, he's 15-33. They've got losing seasons, 10 straight losing seasons. Only Jacksonville, Cincinnati, and the Jets have lost more. New York fans, it's not going to last forever. Daniel Jones, I mean, what are we, year 4? You're still waiting on him to develop the Saquon Barkley thing. Joe Judge, now, he's won me over, but I will say this. He's also almost got into a fist fight with the offensive line coach. He said that's no big deal. That sounds like who was the guy who's recently fired from Houston? That just slipped my mind.
Bill O'Brien.
Bill O'Brien. That's a Bill O'Brien guy kind of losing his cool. That could be a warning shot there. I hope not. I don't think so. I think the only reason that he's kept there, they did get a little hot here. They started looking like they're playing inspired football, but I think he is on a massive hot seat next year.
I think the warning shot we're going to find out about with Jason Garrett. Now, if Jason Garrett reportedly is going to be interviewed, if he hasn't been already, for the LA Charger job, obviously if he's offered that job, he'll go. But if he's not offered that job and he's not offered a head coaching job and the Giants move on from Jason Garrett, that has Joe Judge's fingerprints all over the place. And that shows that Joe Judge is wielding maybe a little more power than he should. Now, granted, the head coach should have a big say in his assistant coaches, but that would show Joe Judge's power within the organization if he could override Dave Gettleman and bring in another offensive coordinator, because Jason Garrett has a ton of experience, and I don't think he did a bad job last year as offensive coordinator. Did Daniel Jones develop fully? You can make an argument, he didn't, but let's see what happens in regard to Jason Garrett.
Yeah, that between Jason Garrett next year, they got to make the playoffs or be right there in it. They can't win just 6 games. I mean, I know everybody has injuries. I understand that, but
they got to be at least 8-8 up there if they don't make the playoffs. Yeah.
Well, guys, I don't fault if Jason Garrett goes to the Chargers. I don't fault Joe Judge for that if he's got an opportunity.
No, not at all. Not at all.
He likes what he sees there. I think, Robert, why that fist fight almost happened was because he brought in an offensive line consultant and hurt hurt Colombo's pride a little bit, and he didn't like it. And you're telling this guy who you signed up to be the line coach, who was a good line coach with the Cowboys, was an All-Pro with the Cowboys as an offensive tackle, and you're saying, well,
I think it's his name. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're bringing a consultant, and that kind of tells you, hey, maybe you're not doing that good of a job. So I think tempers flared because of that, and I don't know. I mean, listen, there's going to be a lot of changes in the coaching staff, I think, as you go forward, trying to find the right combination to get the players on the right page. So I'm not too worried about changes in the coaching staffs or I'm looking at results on the field. When I see a team not quitting at all, it gives me hope. So, So anyway, I think Gettleman and Judge will, in the next couple of years, I don't think you can blame Gettleman for their past performance when he first came in, because he had to deal with what he had and try to make the Giants competitive at that time. So maybe the cap space was destroyed, and maybe you blame that on the previous regime. But I think he's got maybe a short leash on him. I think next year.
Well, he shouldn't have, Matt, but Gettleman has made more good moves than not. He's criticized for not drafting Dwayne Haskins. That turned out to be a great move.
Yeah.
Listen, they criticized him for giving the draft choices away for Leonard Williams. That's turned out to be a great move. They criticized him for the Odell Beckham move, getting Jabril Peppers in that move, and he got a draft choice that was Dexter Lawrence. Yes. These moves have turned out good. They criticize him for not taking Sam Darnold, taking Saquon Barkley. That's turned out that Barkley's been a better player than Sam Darnold, different positions, but it's turned out to be a good move. I think he's been made a bit of a scapegoat here.
I agree with that for the most part. I really do.
Well, the argument, look at Miami. I mean, they stripped their roster down in 1 year. And this guy's had 3 years, and he's 15-33. So that's the devil's advocate. You want to flip the argument around.
Sure.
He probably had to get. You could flip a roster over in a year. The problem was he's just too scared to bring up the inedibles. Eli Manning was past his prime. And I love Eli Manning. I mean, we know what you did, but at some point you got to have that conversation.
I think that has a little bit to do with the owners too, where the owners, So I mean, you can deal with that. So
I saw something, Matt. I read these fun type things like on ESPN, proposed trades with draft choices. It's fun to read, but I read one yesterday that was so intriguing in regards to Tua. If Miami isn't sold on Tua, they make a deal with the Jets. Tua gets sent to the Jets. Miami and the Jets flip the number 2 and number 3 draft choices. Plus, the Jets give them their later round, first round pick 25th and the second round choice. And that intrigued me so much because they would still, that meant Miami at number 2 would take one of the college quarterbacks. And Devonta Smith would still be there at number 3 for the Jets, and Tua, who they would be traded to them, so they would have their quarterback to replace Sam Darnold. It was so intriguing to me, that one particular deal proposed. Normally, I just laugh these deals.
Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Again, Jack, not knowing what topics I'm going to cover.
No, we got it. I got to cut in, Matt. You said I can cut in whenever I wanted to production meeting. It makes sense.
He thinks I'm complaining about it, Jack. I'm crediting you right now because that was one of the topics I had with Robert.
There you go. Yeah, well, you see, we think on the same way.
Yes,
it's like a team. We got the chemistry, Mac. We got it down.
We're both on the same page, Jack.
I'll be the next Mike and Mike. I can already see.
So, Robert.
Yeah.
Tua played this year. Fitzpatrick had to come in when he had problems, and of course he got a little hurt there too. But even when he was healthy, they brought in Fitzpatrick. Tua didn't really seem too upset about it. Maybe he was, but he didn't seem like he was. And Fitzpatrick played a star role a couple times during those games. So my question to you is, and one general manager said this, and this is why I'm asking you, he believes that Tua doesn't have the it factor, that he's not going to be a franchise quarterback, that he might be a good quarterback, maybe a very solid quarterback, but not amongst the elite. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I'll say this, and this is probably not popular, but when you're drafted, you're always compared to your peers. This is a competitive world. This is the way it is. Okay, Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow, they had the same limitations in the offseason. No preseason either. We all had COVID. I get it. However, when you got that high pick, if it's me, because if I don't care if you get a superstar wide receiver, the guy was it Smith, the one that won the Heisman from Alabama at 3. I saw him in one of the mock drafts. If you miss on Tua, you're out of a job in about a year or two. That's just the way this league is. If you draft a quarterback, whether it be Justin Fields or whoever, and they both hit, then you have a trade piece. You're probably not going to get a 3, but you're probably going to be in the playoff hunt. You're competing with the Buffalo Bills, who are surging, the Patriots, who are surging, the Jets. All these teams got money. They got quarterback aspirations. They got great coaching, Bill Belichick. You're in a highly competitive division. Brian Flores is not afraid to make the big move. He fired Chan Gailey. And I think that if it's me, I would just draft another quarterback. If Tua kills him, and you just trade the guy, you're probably not going to get equal value back. But if you draft that wide receiver and this guy still struggles like he has, he's not quick in the pocket. Remember, he's an undersized player too. He doesn't have Kyler Murray's speed. We have to, and again, I mentioned this last week, guys. Look at the receivers that he had at Alabama. I mean, he had a guy that won the Heisman Trophy with him.
That's why, if that proposed deal came off and he went to the Jets, and the Jets flip-flopped the pick and went at number 3, they would take Devonta Smith. So he would have the great wideout. Tua had a good year. That's what people don't realize. He was 6-3 as a starter. It was in comparison to Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow that disappointed people. But he actually had a solid year for a rookie. And Justin Herbert played 7 more games. He started every game for the Chargers. And Tua came in basically at mid-season. So Justin Herbert had that little more experience. And Justin Herbert was getting better as the year was going along as well. Keep that in mind. Tua didn't have that full year.
Jack, you say he's 6-3 as a starter. How many times was he pulled out of the game and Fitzpatrick was put in?
Yeah.
So I mean, he may be 6-3 as a starter because he started the game.
Well, you use your bullpen. Listen, you don't penalize Roger Clemens for Mariano Rivera getting the save, do you?
That is true. Yeah. That is true. But when you have that game against the Raiders, and the Raiders are bad defense. They're like the Titans. They don't have no pass rush in the secondary. It's horrendous. There were people talking behind the scenes. And again, I'm tell you this, guys, every week. They see this guy every single day in practice. They know how good their defense is, and they know how bad the Raiders' defense is. They're thinking to themselves, and I'm saying them, I'm talking the management, Brian Flores. Guys, if we don't make a move here, we'll be out of a job just like that. We can buy ourselves a legacy here if we take this shot with this 3 pick. I would take the chance. And a lot of those games that he won, they were up big early because they made special teams, touchdowns. This guy's throwing for like 80, 90 yards a game in some of those games. And that really, I think he had a decent game against Kansas City. Kansas City was way up. They were playing a lot of prevent there. I think it was 28 or something. It was a huge lead Kansas City had in the second quarter in that game. So I would roll the dice. And Tua knows it's a competitive world. He did the same thing in college. Remember, he had to compete with Jalen Hurts in college, so he understands.
Very true. So our last topic, Robert, is about the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
So they get to the playoffs. They win their first playoff game in 25 years. It looks like they're young enough. It looks like they got a solid foundation to build upon.
Yeah.
Do you think that they could be the new dynasty over there in the AFC East?
Well, when you say the word dynasty, you say dynasty, I say win 2 or 3 Super Bowls in a row or something like that. I'm not sure about that. You look at the Patriots, they're going to be 3rd in cap space. I'm going to say the Jets are 2nd in cap space. You've got Bill Belichick there. You've got Miami surging. If Miami gets this quarterback thing, this is probably that standalone year Well, they may get to the AFC Championship game, maybe even to the Super Bowl. Had a shaky game there. They struggle to run the football. So they're going to have to work on that and be a more complete team. They'll probably lose their offensive coordinator this year. That's another guy that may be interviewed, Brian DeBall. Maybe the Jets interview him. I'm not ready to crown them. You look at the league, Justin Herbert and the Chargers, you look at the same division, Kansas City, they still have a good foundation there with Andy Reid. It's too early to crown them. They've been a great story. They're exciting. That win against Miami, that looked like a Super Bowl ready team. I understand. But, hey, we saw that last year with the 49ers. Now they're looking at possibly trading Garoppolo. So that's a little bit soon for that.
Okay.
But it's a good story. It's great for the league, though.
I agree. I definitely agree with that.
First win in 25 years.
Robert, you even spent some extra time with us. Well, I loved having you on for the 40 minutes instead of the 30 minutes. Very, very insightful, and we enjoy having you on every week. Enjoy the games today. I'll beat you to it. And have a great day, Robert. Always a pleasure having you on.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Enjoy the games.
All right.
So there you go. Robert Butler from Sports Scope does a great job for us every week, Jack. And this is going to be our last break, and then we get to do what we're paid all the money to do, Jack. We'll come back, and we'll recap the games in depth, and we'll preview the games today. Some very good games, Jack. I mean, I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think in a lot of different ways, but I guess we'll find that out as we go. So we'll take our last timeout for the show, Jack, for today. I'm over here looking at pictures and
I thought this was the last show we're ever going to do the way you sounded a moment ago, Max.
Yeah, I know, right? So, folks, stick with us. We'll be right back in a few minutes, and we'll get down to our thoughts and finish up the program for today. A great Super Bowl, a super wild card weekend. We'll have our thoughts on that. So we'll be right back. Stick with us.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed. Yeah, well, Kyle's not here. How come? Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's the first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, though, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information on talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. So far, so good. We've had a great show so far. I'm Mac with your co-host Jack Hirsch. Great sports analyst that I have on every day, Wednesday through Sunday. He's your co-host. He's knowledgeable. He knows what he's talking about, and I love it when he's raw and just kind of commenting on stuff. We don't even talk that much before the show, believe it or not, folks, unless it's our debate show. We save it all for your show so that we're fresh and, you know, sometimes a little argumentative, but it's all in fun. I mean,
Mac, when I agree with you, I know what I'm talking about. You say these glowing things when I agree with you. When I don't agree with you, I don't hear any of that.
That's true, Jack. You know, you got me figured out. So a couple things of business we'll share with you really quick. We are on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network with a bunch of great podcasts. Go over there to the Facebook page and check them out. Have a bunch of shows. We have Robert Butler's on there. Anthony Cervino, who was just on, is on there. We got a few new shows coming on board. It's there. The goal over there at Northeast Streaming Sports is to get 24 hours of entertainment, sports entertainment on there for you. We got somebody from overseas, down in Louisiana. I mean, we're growing, Jack, all over the place. This show and the sports network, it's a great little network that just got started up. So check it out when you got the chance. We're on Spotify now, Jack, where if you can't see us during the morning, a lot of people are on the way to work, you know, and they can't actually tune in and watch the video. But we are on Spotify, so you can check us out over there and listen to the show at work or in the car when you're going in. Our sponsors are Fanatics. We have a link over on our website at macandjacksports.com where you can go there and go directly to their store. Great products for all your teams, all the NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA. If you like to wear their jerseys and hats and stuff like that, show your support for your team. They're on our website. Also on our website at macandjacksports.com, we have bstbreaks.com. And if you love memorabilia like I do, cards, signed jerseys, stuff like that, you know, you love to collect and stuff, they have great memorabilia over there. And if you put the Mac and Jack Sports, a Mac and Jack code, MACJACK, you get $10 off right away off their already low prices, Jack. So some great advertisers we have on with us now, and we're on a different places. We got Instagram, and we also got Twitter feed that we put our shows on. So you can see us in a lot of different places, Jack. I don't think they want to see our faces, but we're up anyway. We're doing the best we can. So anyway, Jack, this is the part of the show on Sunday that we take a look at the games. We can recap them really fast if you want. I was really happy about the Buffalo Bills Colts game. It was very entertaining. There's a lot of things that could have happened. The game could have gone either way. It was a great playoff game, a great game to watch. I watched it while I worked yesterday at my other job, and I was watching almost every minute of the game. I almost messed up at work a couple times. So, I mean, great game, Jack.
Mac, it was a great game, but more than winning and losing, people don't talk that much about legacies, what this game means to a lot of players, their legacies. You take the Colt Bill game, and a lot of people think this was Philip Rivers' swan song. He played well yesterday, actually, in them losing the game. I mean, there were a few missed throws, one in the end zone on 4th down when they went at 4th and goal instead of kicking the field goal. He overthrew the receiver slightly. He couldn't quite hit a sideline pass at the end of the game to get him into field goal range, but all in all, he played well. But if this was Philip Rivers' final game, his legacy basically is going to be in part of a quarterback who never quite got to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
He had all those years with the Chargers. He's had only 1 year with the Colts. He's never really come that close, even though he's been to the playoffs a number of times. So you think the difference it would have made had he won one Super Bowl. Because you look at a couple of his contemporaries, Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees. Aaron Rodgers, an all-time great without question. Drew Brees arguably won. And both those guys have only won one Super Bowl. If you take that one Super Bowl away from both guys, they fall into the Phil Rivers category. Or if you give Phil Rivers just one Super Bowl win, does he fall into that category? And what people forget, especially today's game, they talk about Drew Brees. This might be his final game. If he retires and Philip Rivers retires at the same time, keep this in mind. Drew Brees was the starting quarterback of the San Diego Chargers when they drafted Philip Rivers, fourth overall. Now, why on earth? Well, they actually technically drafted Eli Manning first overall and traded him. But why would they even want to draft a quarterback, the San Diego Chargers, when they had Drew Brees? When you think of how his career came out.
Yeah, Jeff, but they got rid of him because he hurt his shoulder for the most part.
The last game, that made the decision easier because he'd been playing really well. But you think of the other legacy games too. Lamar Jackson was mentioned before. It's his 3rd year in the league. They've gotten bumped in the first round the first 2 years. What happens if they get bumped again?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, a stigma is attached to Lamar Jackson that he's going to have to start overcoming. The legacy of Tom Brady, can he win another Super Bowl, without Belichick? And you just go on. And Baker Mayfield playing today. Is Baker Mayfield truly going to become an elite quarterback? Because for that to happen, you got to take that step during the playoffs. Mitch Trubisky, what's his legacy? What's his situation going forward? In large part, it's going to depend on how the Bears do today against the Saints. So a lot of legacies are on the line, today, and that's what sometimes people overlook.
That's a great point, Jack. Philip Rivers drafted when Eli Manning and Roethlisberger were both drafted, and both of them have Super Bowls. Eli with multiple, and I think Ben has multiple too. But at least they both won one Super Bowl, and that's from that draft class. So even Marino falls into that. Maybe he was the greatest quarterback of all time, question, but he never won a Super Bowl, even though he went to one. So, it's great points all the way around, Jack. Seattle, I was kind of disappointed in. I mean, they came out like gangbusters. I think the Giants exposed them during the season that you could run on them and that you could, if your defense played well, you could beat them. The Rams, without their starting quarterback to start, of course, he came in at the end of the game with defense. And they say defense wins championships, Jack. And if that's true, the Rams are in a great position. But I was disappointed in Seattle, Jack.
Well, I'll tell you what annoyed me early in the game. DK Metcalf. He had an absolute hissy fit when he went back to the bench. They had to calm him down because obviously he felt the ball wasn't being thrown to him when it should. And you just can't have that.
Yeah.
It's upsetting to the coach. Pete Carroll, the coach, shouldn't have to go to a player to calm him down. That's the problem the Giants have with Odell Beckham.
Agreed.
You can't have these prima donna receivers. And you want to know something? When Russell Wilson threw the pick 6, that pass was intended for DK Metcalf after DK Metcalf had the hissy fit.
Right.
So what you wind up doing, you upset your quarterback. You make him more conscious that he has to look towards you rather than spread the ball around. You just can't have it. I'd love to see one time when one of these receivers has one of these hissy fits, the head coach lets an assistant know, tell him to go into the locker room right now.
Yeah,
leave him in there for a quarter before you let him come back out to play.
That's a great
You're
point.
not going to tolerate this nonsense on the side, because I know coaching on a lower level, like we both coach on a lower level, especially something like high school, and I'm talking about basketball. You take a play out of the game, he's having a fit on the bench. The coach hears it. A lot of times it gets the coach's mind off the game. The coach is really annoyed about it. And I'll give you a great example. When Scottie Pippen had the bad lapse in judgment when they played the Knicks in that famous playoff game where Phil Jackson wanted Tony Kukoc to take the last shot, and Scottie Pippen didn't want to go back in the game. He was sitting at the end of the bench. After the Bulls won the game on the last second shot, Phil Jackson wasn't smiling. He was walking to the locker room really upset.
Well, Jack, let's get to the last game. I'm going to mention real quick, and we'll get to today's games because we're running out of time. Washington, I think they're going in the right direction. They played scrappy, even though Tampa Bay was the better team, but they hung in there till the end. So a lot of respect for Washington without their starting quarterback, what they did. So we got the Ravens, Titans. We have the Bears, Saints, and the Browns and Steelers. Again, I think it's all going to be about matchups, minus the turnovers. The turnovers always play a big part in whether you win or lose the game. If we don't count the turnovers, me personally, I think the Ravens have the edge in the Titans. The Saints, of course, have the edge over the Bears. The only one I'm concerned about, and I think will be the game that might put a question mark on the Steelers' season is the Browns. If the Browns beat the Steelers, I agree with you with the Ravens. The Ravens, who knows what the legacy of Jackson will be if he loses again. But I think more importantly, with the Steelers jumping out to that quick 11-0 start, and if they get knocked out of the first round, I mean, what do you think of the year?
It'll be a disappointment. Like I said earlier, half the Brown coaching staff is out. I just want to know who's going to provide the leadership. Is Baker Mayfield really going to take the team on his shoulders and provide the leadership? And Aaron Rodgers could do it. Patrick Mahomes could do it. Ben Roethlisberger could do it with the Steelers, guys who've been around a while. Baker Mayfield, can he really do that and lead? Keep in mind when they lost that game to the Jets, they were decimated too. And Baker Mayfield fumbled a few times. To his credit, he took responsibility, but they didn't play well in that game when they were in a chaotic situation. And now they don't have their head coach. They don't have assistant coaches there. It's going to be a tough chore. I think the Browns will hang in. It'll be a good game, but you got to go with the Steelers here.
Well, even though the coach won't be on the sidelines, he'll be in the telephone, Jack. Trust me. I mean, he's not gonna just stay there in the room and they're gonna take his telephone away from him. So he's gonna be calling the shots. Maybe not from the sidelines, but he'll be calling the shots. I think the trainer has been appointed the head coach representative to be on the sideline at the time. I'm just making
that's very motivating, Mac.
Yeah.
Very motivating.
At least they'll jump down and do 10 push-ups if they mess up. You know what I'm saying? So that might bring that back. But I am intrigued, Jack, what you mentioned. I think the Saints will win the Bears game. But I am intrigued also about the Ravens and Titans. I just don't think the Titans can control the Ravens, their defense. And that's my biggest question. I think the Ravens' defense is better than the Titans' defense, maybe twofold. I think the Ravens will come up and they'll be pumped up. They'll stop Henry, or I should say control Henry. I don't think can stop him.
If they contain Henry, they're going to win the game.
Yes.
They have excellent corners, the Ravens. I don't think they contain Henry. I think Tennessee contains Lamar Jackson just enough. Tennessee has a dreadful pass rush, but I think their style of play this game is just not going to allow Lamar Jackson to run wild. They're going to be forcing him to pass a lot, and the pressures on Lamar Jackson, from the Raven viewpoint, it's always on Derrick Henry, but Derrick Henry won't be phased. He'll have a big game. Let's see what happens with Lamar Jackson here. Listen, I'll go on a limb. I'm looking for as tight a game as possible. I would be surprised it goes into overtime. I'm going with the Titans here.
Yeah, I think that, that they'll play a zone against Lamar Jackson, maybe only rush three people and mainly a running defense and see if he can beat the zone. You know something? I think Jackson has a big passing game today. I think that not that this is going to be representative of his career, but I think he can throw the ball on the Titans defense because their secondary is so beat up and they don't have a pass rush. They'll be mirroring him. He's going to fake running with the ball like he does so well, and then somebody's going to break open. And I think that Lamar Jackson is going to surprise a lot of people today.
Well, Lamar Jackson complained early in the year about their play calling, the Ravens, the plays sent in. I don't know whether that's been addressed because their schedule for the most part late in the year was a weak schedule. Like I said earlier, they scored that big Monday night win over Cleveland, but otherwise they've been beating the weaker teams.
Very true, Jack. Ravens are the hottest team in the playoffs right now, so we'll see what happens. Great show, Jack. You did a great job as always. People, thanks for tuning in for their football show, our pregame show, on before any other pregame show. So thank you for coming in. We had a great show. Thanks to the guests. Thanks for you all for tuning in. And we'll be back Wednesday when we are not as emotional, Jack. And we'll be able to talk a little bit about the games probably and, of course, of all the sports updates with basketball and hockey coming up very quickly. Thanks again, folks. Have a great day. And, Jack, you have a great day.
Enjoy the games.